The title of my presentation today is International Peacemaking in the Age of Artificial Intelligence Toward a Theory of Contextual Transformation. I'm going to just unpack the title and my intent of the presentation. But before I do so, I want to talk a little bit about my personal history and motivation for doing this webinar. Since 1997, I have worked as a scholar practitioner of peace building, starting with post-genocide Rwanda, worked in different contexts across Asia, the Middle East, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Though I am not necessarily a technology expert, as a practitioner of peace building, I witnessed the powerful roles of social media and communication technologies in general in either exacerbating conflict or bringing people together. And so I recently made a determination to get into especially the AI component of the use of technology in the context of peacemaking. And because of my background, I am passionate about building a practical methodology for peacemaking. And today's presentation is more about an emerging realization and outcome of my ongoing attempt to build a methodology of peacemaking, which, however, is informed by empirical, theoretical, and methodological understanding that we have in the field of peace and conflict studies. Throughout the presentation, I'll be making a reference to an initiative called Straight Talk. And Straight Talk is a non-partisan civil society dialogue that brings together civil society delegates from Taiwan, mainland China, and the United States for the purpose of building a mutual understanding and relationship, as well as developing resolution options and action plans for the resolution of the Taiwan Strait conflict. And starting this year, I began to incorporate a new methodology of dialogue that takes place for over a 3-hour period within the context of a 3-day Straight Talk workshop. So I'll be using a Straight Talk and a conflict resolution across the Taiwan Strait as, in a sense, a case study. But my intention is to invite each and every one of you to follow the context of your interest. It does not have to be about cross-strait relations, but the concreteness of the cross-strait relations is going to make this presentation more of a condensed practitioner training with intent of developing a methodology of dialogue and conflict resolution. And I believe that a deep dive into not only AI and cutting-edge technologies, but also their implications for the practice of peacemaking is increasingly important, partly because our field of peace and conflict has hardly caught up with grasping the full understanding of what that technostructural shifts would mean to us. I'm going to talk more about the significance of this action research as well as a presentation a bit later. But for now, I want to give you an overview of what's to come. First, I am framing my action research as well as this presentation quite broadly to go way beyond AI. So I want to share with you my view of a macro-historical perspective on AI and other technological innovations. Then I will be presenting a proposed theory of contextual transformation, which I believe is useful as a framework for conflict analysis and resolution in the 21st century. I will then describe a conflict resolution exercise I'm using in the context of cross-strait relations, with a particular emphasis on the implications of AI and communication technologies. Learning from the dialogue participants, Taiwanese, mainland Chinese, and American, I want to share with you a little bit about what those participants say about AI's impact on cross-strait relations. And then finally, I draw conclusions and implications for international peacemaking. So let me begin with the first point, macro-historical view. What I'm presenting to you is really a bird's eye view of human history. The humanity, as we know it, started 200 million years ago. And since the origin of humanity till today, there are so many milestone events, including, for example, around 160,000 BC, the behavioral modernity that enable humanity to think in abstract, complex way. Agriculture came about some 13,000 BC. Invention of writing, 3,400 BC. Invention of money, 3,000 BC. Fast forward to modern times, 16th century, we saw the scientific revolution. Mid-18th century industrial revolution starting with England. 1945 was the invention of nuclear weapons, the use of nuclear weapons. And in the 1960s, humanity invented the internet. Why do I start with this huge bird's eye view of human history? Because it is my contention that generative AI, along with a number of technostructural shifts which are taking place in the 2020s and in the decades forward, are comparable in magnitude and significance to each and every one of those big changes that happened over 200 million years ago, 200 million years. The challenge of contemporary society is that those macro structural shifts, technostructural shifts are multiple, and they are taking place simultaneously. I'm going to just talk a little more about AI and other big changes from a broader historical perspective. But before I do so, I want to introduce this whole theory of contextual transformation that I was referring to. And to talk about it, I need to introduce to you a distinction between three kinds of social causes. And the first cause I want to talk about, using a traffic accident as an example, is an immediate cause. So the car from behind hit my car, and that is an immediate cause of a traffic accident. But when we say proximate cause, we are essentially referring to a bad weather, poor road condition, or consistent poor nature of driving test or driving training in that society. Proximate causes do not account for the immediacy of the traffic accident, but they account for the kinds of circumstances or conditions that traffic accidents of this nature are more frequent. Then the third type of cause I want to refer to talk about contextual transformation is a background cause. So in the context of a traffic accident, I'm talking about the invention of the combustion engine, the discovery of petroleum, the use of petroleum. And of course, if you zoom out to that level of background causes, we can no longer explain the immediacy of a traffic accident. Therefore, those background causes at best, more of the circumstantial causes. Why do I distinguish between those three types of causes? Because I want to talk about the proposed theory of contextual transformation. Now, in the field of peace and conflict studies, when we analyze a conflict, you see on the screen the relationship between parties A, B, and C. Each one of the parties has an agency, that is to say the capacity and will to make decisions and act on the decisions, and they're interacting. This is a very conventional way of understanding a human conflict and how people like us try to resolve the conflict. Now, when I talk about contextual transformation, what I'm referring to is a whole premise and basis upon which the agency is interacting can shift. In other words, instead of talking about the immediate causes of a traffic accident, I am drawing our attention to the massive changes in the proximate causes and the background causes. And when those proximate and background causes shift in a macro historical way, the underlying assumption of human agency and interaction itself becomes either obsolete or at least challenged. My argument is that AI should be thought of as a context of a driver of massive proximate and background causes in the context of international conflict and peacemaking. Let me be much more concrete here. In the context of the conflict between Taiwan, mainland China, and the United States, I see AI's social impact as an example of background/proximate causes that is potentially responsible for a future contextual transformation. Here, by contextual transformation, I am referring to the shifting of the context or premise upon which the hitherto unquestionable assumption of the conflict would shift. So the assumption centers around who the agents of conflict are, what the nature of interactions is, and things which are really fundamental about why and how conflict emerges. But artificial intelligence is one, but many other macro historical shifts taking place. Other shifts, as I see them, include nuclear, biological, and other weapons of mass destruction, global conflict and competition in outer space, bioengineering innovations, including the modification of the DNA, and a human ability to take DNA sample from air and water, global information networks and rise of dataism, data flow being the underlying force of social continuity and change, shifts in demographic structures within and across countries and regions, with the prediction that in about half a century, Africa will become the most populous country, while countries such as Japan and China would have population decline to be quite steady. The future waves and mutations of global pandemics, climate change and environmental degradation, and global energy transition, which is very slow to come, but it is sure to come due to many circumstances that are existential. Now, these are only several, but the point is that AI should not be thought of as an isolated, proximate, and background factor for a potential conflict transformation. In the exercise of something called global challenges and their implications for cross-strait relations, within a context of straight talk, we talk about multiple of those challenges. But today, I'm going to focus sharply on artificial intelligence. Now, this is a little bit of a thought experiment. As I mentioned to you, this is the whole purpose of this presentation is to give you an image of how in Straight Talk, we are doing a practitioner-oriented exercise of engaging conflict participants, trying to develop a concrete method of dialogue for conflict analysis and resolution. And so within the 3-day framework of an extended dialogue, we introduce a 3-hour component, and the 3-hour component asks participants 4 to 5 delegates from each one of the 3 sides, Taiwan, China, US, the following questions, or state the following objectives. Using this exercise on AI, we're going to enhance the awareness of selected global challenges, such as AI's impact, with far-reaching consequences on human lives. We will explore the implications of the challenges, for example, AI's impact for each one of the societies involved, and for the long-term future of cross-strait relations. We will contextualize cross-strait relations in the global challenges so that the dialogue participants can apply their historical awareness of the coming contextual shifts to cross-strait conflict engagement and conflict resolution. And here I typically show a video about an AI robot answering questions from an interviewer about what's to come for the human conflict and peacemaking. But I'm going to just skip that and go straight to the kinds of prompt that I share with the Straight Talk participants. Before I share a prompt about AI, I want to really emphasize that AI development is motivated by a very positive incentives that include enhancement of educational practice, environmental protection, humanitarian disaster relief, development including agricultural development, health, and medical science. The contributions AI has already made, and it is bound to make in those and other areas, is massive. But to the extent that we are concerned about conflict analysis and resolution, I'm going to necessarily highlight challenges that AI is going to bring. First challenge is a weaponization, something that people already know. So the delivery of AI-operated weapons, its menace is quite visible in Ukraine-Russia war that serves as a reminder. And one of the many things that weaponization of AI does is to make a state of hostility perpetual, meaning that in a conventional warfare, we know when the war started, when the war ends, but AI combined with cyberspace would perpetuate hostility, and that takes place away from public attention. AI-assisted cyber aggression contributes to the rise of technological companies that undermine state monopoly of technology and the use of force. And AI, according to Henry Kissinger, contributes to the erosion of the balance of power and strategic parity. Therefore, the security experts in intelligence agencies would lose control to some extent over how to maintain strategic parity and those traditional ideas. And these and other challenges would urge people such as United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres to call for a global code of conduct that seeks to regulate AI's weaponizations, especially on nuclear weapons delivery. The second challenge that is well known that is serious for cross-strait relations is misinformation and disinformation. The premise of this discussion of AI is the understanding that adult Americans spend on average over half their waking hours in front of a screen. And it is perhaps more. My Chinese colleagues say Chinese spend far more than half the waking time. And the fake news spreads 6 times the speed of regular news. One of the immediate impact of AI-led disinformation, misinformation, focusing on the US, is a 2016 US presidential election. There is a small town called Veles in Macedonia that is deserted in terms of the industrial waves. And the technology specialists in that town mobilized unemployed people with technological competence and trained them. And this whole team, or the network of the Macedonians, regularly, massively disseminated the English contents on internet that intentionally polarized the debate between Clinton and Trump, as well as the previous elections. And the implications of this are massive. Some of that is well researched, others are unknown. And as we are heading for another round of US presidential election, we are bound to see a version of this reenacted. What does it mean for democracy is a big challenge. And the third and final challenge I'm going to highlight, for it is very relevant to cross-strait relations, showing the picture of taxis in Shanghai, is job losses and the rising global caste system. Now, according to already an outdated 2014 study, that 47% of jobs in USA are at the risk by 2034 due to AI. So what are the kind of jobs most vulnerable? We are talking about taxi and truck drivers, factory workers, farmers, fishermen, construction workers, cleaners, catering staff, mailman, delivery serviceman, security guards, secretaries, interpreters, translators, and more. An Israeli historian, Noah Yuval Harari, in his Homo Deus, makes a quite serious but important prediction. He says, traditionally, life has been divided into 2 main parts, a period of learning followed by a period of working. Very soon, this traditional model will become utterly obsolete due to AI, and the only way for humans to stay in the game will be to keep learning throughout their lives and to reinvent themselves repeatedly. Many, if not most humans, may be unable to do so. An increasing proportion of the world's unemployed, socioeconomically irrelevant population, quote unquote, may find refuge in drugs, computer games, and other unproductive activities. Therefore, according to Harari, the rising global caste system, which is characterized by a widening gap between the unemployed, increasing relevant masses on the one hand, and highly skilled and increasing relevant elite on the other hand. Why? Because the latter keeps inventing new algorithms. The former won't have a chance to elevate their technological competence to join the job market, to invent algorithms and technologies. So he calls this global caste system. And as the straight talk participants from three sides are introduced to some of those narratives and prompts. They are invited to discuss the following questions. What are the most significant implications of this coming contextual shift for you over the next 20 to 30 years? What are its most significant implications for your society over the next 20 to 30 years? What are its most significant implications for the long-term future of cross-strait relations? Then we do an exercise. First, each one of the three teams, national teams, get together separately because the implications are unique for each one of the three sides, due in part to differences in political systems. Then they present to each other. Then together highlight implications for the relationship across the three sides, namely the cross-strait relations. There are many ideas the straight talk participants raise, but I'm going to just highlight what appears to be most intriguing. Some of the US participants said their major concern is the decline of the middle class. Remember the caste system we talked about. This information can lead to the degradation of democracy. The Macedonian technological professionals' effort illustrates this. And the rise of homelessness and mental health issues because of the caste system. Mainland Chinese participants highlight the rising global caste gap and the flight of talents because technology experts capable of introducing new algorithms will follow capital across nations. Isolation and populism fueled by AI algorithm may rise, and there's going to be a potential increase in distrust among the government institutions across the Taiwan Strait. Taiwanese participants are concerned about the erosion of trust in the state and democracy due to disinformation and the rise of isolationist populist leaders. So there is a little bit of an echo between mainland Chinese and Taiwanese for these illustrative examples. And as the delegates get together and brainstorm implications for the whole of cross-strait relations, some of them are concerned about escalation of the regional conflict to global conflict through a cyberspace enhanced by AI. But others raise a prospect of AI as assistant to mediation. Yet others are deeply concerned about unemployment that becomes a driving force of migration from mainland China to Taiwan or vice versa. Now, these are experiments from dialogues we are having, and we are going to continue dialogues that will generate more robust data. But for now, I want to draw broader conclusions. But before I draw broader conclusions from AI, I want to just share with you that in straight talk dialogues, we don't end with AI brainstorming only. We talk, for example, about global energy transition and its implications. And if time permits, we talk about one or more challenges. And importantly, we see intersection of those global challenges and their implications, including AI. So focusing sharply on AI's social impact, what are the broader implications I would draw for international conflict analysis and peacemaking? I would say the following 5 points. Number one, we need to construct and popularize a macro historical perspective on the far-reaching impacts of AI and other technological innovations. Remember the bird's eye view of human history. And I think AI and related technostructure shifts should not be seen as additive to the previous shifts. Those are exponential, taking us to a new realm. Thus, we must acknowledge that emerging technostructural shifts will significantly expand both interconnectedness and complexity in conflict analysis and resolution. We need a theory and method to catch up with this complexity. the theory of contextual transformation offers a framework for understanding complexity and taking action with historical awareness. And to this end, the third point, contextual transformation, I argue that we must reimagine the role of human agency, the ability of human beings to have the to have decisions and act on the decisions in the context of international conflict and peacemaking. To be more precise, in addition to becoming a change maker, we need to cultivate our ability to identify and capitalize on historical shifts that are largely independent of individual efforts, but which are driven by macrostructure shifts. So to use a metaphor of an ocean, no human being can create ocean waves. But if I become a surfer, I can become a sharp observer of how the waves are coming and choose a timing and angle at which I place my surfing board and surf. This is not to be opportunistic. This is not to minimize the role of human agency. But human agency has to have a very humble role in this context of macro structure shifts. And finally, because AI, especially when it is combined with life science revolutions, is going to expand the role of intelligence that challenges human consciousness, we must safeguard social space to exercise human consciousness and meaning-making in order to control and monitor the use of intelligence, including artificial intelligence.
Hello, Dr. Tots.
How are
It's
you?
my pleasure to be one of the participants in this great and intriguing topic, especially as you know, we had a talking with each other and our mutual interest was about AI. I want to ask, as I'm living in a developing country, and AI development in future 10 years may provide a lot of unemployment in our country. And I think that this would be such as disease or a pandemic such as coronavirus that we had and experienced it in the three previous years. I think that the government has the responsibility to provide free AI for all the people. And I think it should be a global decision, not country by country. And rather than we may lose a lot of people, because imagine that some of the people, they don't have access to educational programs in order to learn how to use AI. So they don't have the ability to live anymore. And I want to know your view or your opinion about it, especially that we are our country is really different. You are living in a developed country,
Yeah.
and I'm from a developing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. The international effort you alluded to focuses more on regulations and safeguards. At the United Nations, European Union, Japan is also leading international conferences, the UK is making an effort, etc., etc., etc. But when it comes to providing technological needs and training for people in so-called developing countries, we are far behind, partly because the safeguards and regulations are always conscious of the technology companies and their investors as well. So my personal view is to be completely with you in that we do, number one, need a global arrangement to invest in minimum and training support for technological competency. When it comes to technology such as basic AI skills relevant to life and death of the people, And number two, there has to be some sort of a funding allocation, resource allocation. And number three, apart from a high-tech, high-end AI use, when it comes to basic human needs, whose deprivation causes suffering in conflict-affected and developing countries, we need to have a clear sense of priority as to where international resources should go to actively promote the kinds of AI use that meets basic human needs and remove human suffering. A concrete example that is already quite well used is agriculture technology. Now, how AI is used to spot the particular areas where crop failure is manifest and allocate a small amount of water or irrigation capacity to other areas where crop yields would multiply. Now, those are all aspirational at this point, but these discussions are still not fleshed out, in my view, at the international level. So the more we raise our voices and shape issues and debates, the more we have a fighting chance to contribute to AI's contribution to development and alleviate the deprivation of human needs. So you and I are actually sharing this question together. Thank you for that.
Hi, Tats. I was in Straight Talk 2014.
Yes,
so
I know
really,
you. I know you.
It's really, really nice to see how it's still continued
Wonderful.
and expanded over the years.
Yes.
I'm kind of curious. I'm now living in Berkeley, California, and from the mainland Chinese students I've met and talked to, or the people who are working here, a lot of the sentiment I get is they don't really see themselves in a position to positively influence kind of mainland Chinese society, generally speaking. So I'm kind of curious kind of what your thoughts on as these technologies develop and yet people who are related to the societies using the technologies feel continuously distant or disengaged or unable to participate in shaping the use or the context of these technologies. Just kind of generally, what have you observed, or what do you think are ways to kind of reverse that shift or still create avenues of dialogue either within the state structure or outside of it?
Ryan, I think you and I really struggle together on that one. So I don't pretend to have a magic answer to it. But what I always keep in mind, I ask that question myself all the time, is rather than thinking of the possibility of a macro shift that may become possible with an individual effort, I always ask myself, what is one or two things that I can do immediately? So one or two things that I can do immediately, hoping that will become a foundation for a future change, is to educate the new generation of AI and technology leaders about peacemaking and social ethics. There is a subfield of peace and conflict called peace journalism. And peace journalism has to do with asking a set of questions such as, what kind of reporting or storytelling is going to polarize people? Or what kind of storytelling or journalism will bring people together? And part of the polarizing nature of the storytelling is always to focus on where violence is and who is culpable. And peace journalism, on the other hand, asks, what is the cause of the conflict that generates polarization and violence? What would be a solution to it? This whole notion of solution is a hallmark of peace building. So how many people in mainland China, as well as in Taiwan, actually know about a version of peace journalism and how AI and cyberspace users can enhance peace journalism dimension of communication versus war journalism. And it requires almost like a Gandhian struggle to do an effort of this nature. But I think we have to start somewhere. And I take confidence, encouragement in the fact that Straight Talk over the last 19 years has expanded the network to 1,000 people. One third of them are mainland Chinese, and who are introduced to ideas like that. Some of them become journalists. Others become academics. Others enter business, who may invest in AI technology. So my encouragement is, let's work on this together and continuously look for opportunities that generate a broader impact.